The Velithari dominion ruled over 1,000 worlds. Their empire stretched across 3 arms of the galaxy. They had conquered species that breathed fire and species that lived in the cold vacuum of space. They had broken civilizations that had existed for 1,000,000 years. In all their long history, they had never known defeat. High Admiral Vareth stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Supremacy. The ship was massive. It stretched for nearly 50 km from end to end. Its weapons could crack a planet. Half behind it floated 12,000 more warships, each one carrying enough firepower to burn a continent to ash. Voreth was old by Velithari standards. His gray scales had grown thick and hard. Over 300 years of war. He had personally overseen the extinction of 17 intelligent species. He felt no guilt about this. To him, the weak existed only to serve the strong. This was the natural law of the universe. Today he was looking at a projection of a small blue planet. It floated in the darkness, wrapped in white clouds and blue oceans. It was beautiful in a fragile way. The planet was called Earth by its inhabitants. They called themselves humans. Tell me about them, Voreth said to his intelligence officer. The officer pulled up data on the main screen. They are young species, High Admiral. They have only had space travel for about 200 years. Their technology is primitive compared to ours. Chemical rockets, basic fusion power, no faster than light capability yet. Bareth made a sound of contempt. Insects, their biology is equally unremarkable. The officer continued, carbon-based. They require oxygen, water in moderate temperatures. They are fragile. A single shot from a standard sidearm would kill one instantly. How many of them are there? Approximately 12 billion on their home planet, another 3 billion spread across their solar system, and small colonies. Voreth smiled. 15 billion slaves would be useful. The Dominion always needed workers for the mining operations. Prepare the fleet for invasion. We will add this Earth to our territory. A voice spoke from behind him. High Admiral, I must advise against this action. Voreth turned. Ambassador Kithra stood in the doorway of the command deck. She was ancient, even older than Voreth. Her scales had faded to almost white. She was one of the few who had been allowed to speak with the elder races. The elder races were a mystery. They were civilizations so old that they had existed before the galaxy had finished forming. They had technology that seemed like magic. They could have conquered everything, but they did not. They sat in their ancient worlds and watched the younger species fight and die. They never interfered. Kithra had spent 50 years trying to understand them. She had learned only one thing. They were afraid of something that made even these godlike beings careful. Ambassador, Voreth said with barely hidden annoyance, what brings you to my ship? I have come to deliver a warning. Kithra walked slowly toward the projection of Earth. She stared at it for a long moment. I spoke with the elder races about this system, about these humans, and what did those cowards say? They said there is a border around this solar system, an invisible line that should not be crossed. Voreth laughed. A border drawn by these primitive humans. They do not even know we exist yet. The border was not drawn by the humans. Keith turned to face him. Her ancient eyes were filled with something Vor had never seen in her before. Fear. The border was drawn for them by something else. something that protects them. The command deck fell. Silent officers exchanged nervous glances. Even Voreth felt a small chill run down his spine, but he pushed it away. He had not conquered 1,000 worlds by being afraid of ghost stories. What protects them? He demanded. Another species, a weapon. Tell me and I will destroy it. I do not know what it is. Cathara admitted. The elder races would not say. They only told me that 17 other civilizations have tried to invade Earth over the past 100,000 years. All of them were powerful. All of them were confident. She paused. None of them exist anymore. You expect me to believe that these weak humans destroyed 17 civilizations? No, the humans did nothing. They did not even know the invasions were coming. Something else stopped them. Something else erased those civilizations from existence, not just destroyed them. Erased them. The elder races say that the universe itself has forgotten those species ever existed. Voreth stared at her, then he laughed again, louder this time. This is nonsense. Fairy tales told by species too weak to fight. The elder races do not conquer because they have grown soft and cowardly. They invent stories to justify their weakness. Hi, Admiral, please, I am begging you, do not cross that border. I have 12,000 warships. I have weapons that can destroy stars. I am High Admiral Voreth of the Velethari Dominion, and I do not fear shadows and whispers. He turned back to the projection of Earth. We attack in 3 days. Cathra stood still for a long moment, then she bowed her head. Then I will pray for our souls. High Admiral, though I do not think anyone will be listening. She left the command deck without another word. Vor watched her go with contempt. Then he began issuing orders. The fleet would jump to Earth's solar system. They would demand surrender. When the humans refused, as all species did, they would begin the bombardment. It would be over in days, far across the galaxy, in places older than stars. The elder races felt the Velethari fleet begin to move. They did not send warnings. They did not try to stop it. They had learned long ago that some lessons could only be taught through experience. In their ancient archives, they simply made a note. Another young species was about to cross the border. They would watch. They would record, and then they would add the Velethari to the long list of civilizations that had disappeared. One of the elders, a being so old it had watched the first stars ignite, spoke to its companions. They never listen. It clears throat, said, they never believe. Perhaps that is why it chose the humans. They are the same, stubborn, blind, refusing to accept what they cannot understand. The ancient being made a sound that might have been a sigh. But at least the humans have learned to stay inside the walls. These Velethari are about to learn what happens to those who try to climb over them. The elder races turned their attention away. They had seen this before. They would see it again. Some things in the universe were constant. Stars burned, galaxies turned, and those who crossed Earth's border did not return. The Velethari fleet flew toward its doom, and the universe held its breath. The Velethari fleet dropped out of faster than light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. 12,000 warships spread across the darkness like a swarm of metal locusts. Their sensors immediately began scanning everything around them, the planets, the moons, the small human stations scattered across the system. High Admiral Voreth stood on his command deck and smiled. The humans had detected them. He could see their communication signals bouncing between Earth and their colonies. They were panicking just as every species did when they first saw the might of the Dominion. Open a channel, he commanded. Let them see what has come. For them, his communications officer obeyed. Vath's image was broadcast across every frequency the humans used. He knew they would see a terrifying figure, a towering reptilian creature, covered in gray scales, dressed in the black armor of the Dominion's military elite. People of Earth, he said, I am High Admiral Voreth of the Velithari Dominion. Your world now belongs to us. You will surrender immediately. You will turn over all your resources, your technology, and your population for work assignments. If you resist, we will burn your cities and crack your planet open. Like an egg, you have 1 day to respond. He cut the transmission and waited. His officers moved efficiently around him, preparing weapons and planning invasion routes. Everything was proceeding normally, but something felt wrong. Voreth could not explain it. He had done this hundreds of times. He had seen species scream and cry and beg. He had seen others try to fight, sending their pathetic fleets against his armada, only to be swatted away like insects. But the humans did neither. Their communication signals continued, but they were calm, organized. There was no panic in their transmissions, no desperate pleas, no attempts to negotiate. They were talking to each other as if the largest invasion fleet in galactic history was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. High Admiral, his sensor officer said, I am reading something strange. What is it? The stars behind us, they are flickering. Ver turned to look at the main display. The officer was right. The stars in the direction they had come from were not steady. They seemed to be moving slightly, wavering like reflections in disturbed water. Equipment malfunction, Voreth said. Fix it. I have checked the equipment 3 times, High Admiral. It is functioning perfectly. The stars are actually moving. Voreth felt that chill again. He pushed it away. It means nothing. Continue the approach. The fleet moved deeper into the solar system. They passed the orbit of the outer planets, giant balls of gas and ice that the humans had barely explored. Still no resistance came. Still the humans simply watched and waited. On Earth Moon, a young woman named Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka sat in an observation station and monitored the alien fleet. She was part of the United Terran Defense Council. Her job was to track threats to human space. She was not afraid. Yuki had read the classified files. She knew things that most humans never learned. She knew about the artifact buried deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, the thing that scientists had found 100 years ago. The thing that was older than Earth itself, older than the sun, perhaps older than the galaxy. No one knew what it was. It did not communicate in any way humans could understand, but they had learned one thing about it. It protected Earth. It had always protected Earth. It would always protect Earth. Yuki watched the alien fleet on her screens and felt something she could only describe as pity. Those poor creatures had no idea what they were flying into. Her communication panel lit up. A secure channel from Earth, the highest level of encryption. She answered it. Lieutenant Commander Tanaka, a voice said. It was flat and emotionless. This is Director Morrison. What is the status of the Invaders, they have crossed the helipause, Yuki reported. They are inside the solar system currently, passing the orbit of Neptune. Understood, the Council has decided not to engage them. I expected as much, sir. You know what will happen next, Yuki looked at her screens. The alien ships were moving in perfect formation. Thousands of vessels carrying millions of soldiers, all of them about to disappear. Yes, sir, I know. Good. Continue monitoring and recording. We will need the data for the archives. The channel closed. Yuki turned back to her screens. She noticed that the background radiation of the solar system had changed. There was a new frequency in the noise of space, a low hum that she could almost feel in her bones. It was starting on the eternal supremacy. High Admiral Voreth was growing angry. His fleet had been in the system for 6 hours. Earth had not responded to his demands. Their military had not mobilized. Their population had not fled. It was as if they did not care that death was coming for them. Perhaps they are too primitive to understand the threat, one of his officers suggested. Or perhaps they are simply stupid. Voreth growled, no matter, we will teach them. All ships increase speed. We will reach Earth in 18 hours. Begin bombardment the moment we are in range. High Admiral, the sensor officer shouted. Look, Vor turned to the rear display. His blood went cold. The stars behind the fleet were gone, not hidden, not blocked, gone where there had been millions of points of light. There was now only darkness, a perfect absolute blackness that swallowed everything. It was as if someone had drawn a curtain across the universe. What is happening? Voreth whispered. His navigation officer was crying, actually crying. Voreth had never seen a Velari soldier cry. High Admiral, I cannot plot a course back. The navigation computer says there is nothing to plot a course to. According to our systems, the rest of the galaxy no longer exists. That is impossible. I know, sir, but the computer does not lie. Voreth stared at the blackness where the stars had been. Clear's throat. Ambassador Kathra's words echoed in his mind. There is a border around this solar system, an invisible line that should not be crossed. He had crossed it, and now he could not go back. Continue forward, he commanded. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. We still have our mission. We will conquer Earth. Then we will find a way home. The fleet flew on. Behind them, the darkness grew deeper. And somewhere beneath the ice of a small blue planet, something very old and very powerful began to wake up. Yuki Tanaka watched her screens and made notes. She recorded the exact moment when the alien fleet crossed the point of no return. She recorded the radiation signature of the barrier forming behind them. And she recorded the first faint pulse from the artifact deep below Earth's surface. It was hungry. It had not fed in a very long time, and 12,000 ships full of invaders had just delivered themselves directly to its door. The Velari fleet passed Mars. The red planet hung in space like a drop of blood against the blackness. Behind the fleet, where stars should have been, there was only empty darkness. Ahead of them, Earth waited, a small blue marble that should have been easy prey. High Admiral Voreth stood on his command deck and tried to ignore the fear growing in his chest. He was a conqueror. He had destroyed civilizations. He would not be frightened by strange lights and malfunctioning equipment. Report, he commanded. His sensor officer spoke. Without looking up from his screen, all ships are at full combat readiness. Weapons charged, shields at maximum. We will reach Earth in 4 hours. Any sign of human resistance? None, High Admiral. They have not launched a single ship. Their orbital stations are just watching us. Bareth nodded. Perhaps the humans had accepted their fate. Perhaps they were simply too shocked to respond. Either way, it would be over soon. He would burn their cities and claim their planet, and then he would figure out what had happened to the stars behind them. Then the screaming started. It came from the ships at the edge of the fleet, thousands of voices crying out in terror across the communication channels. Bareth switched to the external cameras and felt his heart stop. The outer ships were changing. That was the only word for it. They were stretching and bending in ways that metal should not bend, their hulls twisted like wet cloth being wrung dry. Their structures folded into angles that made no sense. Some ships seemed to be turning inside out, others were breaking into pieces that floated in different directions at the same time. What is happening? Voreth shouted. His science officer was staring at her instruments with wide eyes. The laws of physics are changing around those ships. Gravity is pointing in different directions. Light is bending wrong. The very fabric of space is rejecting them. That is impossible. High Admiral, look at the stars. Voreth looked. The stars ahead of them, the stars that pointed toward Earth, were moving, not slowly, like celestial bodies should. They were swimming across the sky like fish in dark water. They were rearranging themselves into patterns that hurt to look at. A ship in the middle of the fleet simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. Not destroyed, not exploded, just gone. As if it had never been built, as if it had been erased from reality. Get us out of here, Vor screamed. All ships retreat. Retreat where? His navigation officer cried. There is nowhere to go. The universe behind us is gone. On Earth's moon, Yuki Tanaka watched her screens with calm fascination. She had read the reports from the last invasion, the one that happened 3,000 years ago, before humanity had even developed writing. The artifact beneath Antarctica had recordings of that event, recordings that showed an entire species being unmade. Now she was watching it happen again. Her instruments detected the changes. Local space, the mathematics were beautiful in a terrible way. The artifact was not using weapons. It was not fighting the invaders. It was simply changing the rules of the universe around them, making space hostile to their existence, making reality itself reject their presence. She wondered if the aliens understood what was happening to them. Probably not. Their minds were not designed to comprehend such things. They would experience it only as madness and pain and the slow dissolution of everything they were. Back on the eternal supremacy, High Admiral Voreth watched his fleet die around him. Ships were folding into shapes that could not exist in 3 dimensions. Some crews were phasing through their own walls, their bodies merging with metal and plastic. Others were stretching into thin lines that extended toward Earth, as if something was pulling them apart, one molecule at a time. The screaming on the communication channels had stopped. There was only silence now, the silence of 12,000 ships full of soldiers who no longer existed in any meaningful way. Vareth looked down at his own hands. They seemed normal. His ship seemed Intact, perhaps he would survive this. Perhaps he could still escape. Then he noticed that his shadow was moving. Independently of his body, it was sliding across the floor toward the main view screen as if it wanted to leave. He watched in horror as it climbed the wall and spread across the glass, blocking his view of space. "Hi, Admiral," his science officer said. Her voice was strange, distant. "I have figured out what is happening." Vorath turned to look at her. She was smiling. There were tears running down her scaled face. "We are being edited," she said. "Something is going through reality and removing us from it. Not just our bodies, our history, our existence. It is erasing every moment we have ever lived, every action we have ever taken. Soon the universe will not remember that we were ever real." "No," Vorath whispered. "No, that cannot be. I am High Admiral Vorath. I have conquered 1,000 worlds. I cannot simply be forgotten." "You can," she said. "You will, we all will. The humans will never know we came. The galaxy will never know we existed. We will become less than nothing, less than a dream, less than the memory of a dream." She laughed, then a broken, terrible sound. And then she simply was not there anymore. The space where she had stood was empty. Ver tried to remember her name and found that he could not. Had there ever been anyone standing there? He was not sure. He looked around his command deck. It was empty. Had it always been empty? He could not remember. His thoughts were becoming fuzzy, like a picture slowly losing focus. Outside in the cold void of space, the Velithari fleet was disappearing, not ship by ship, but all at once. Reality was sealing up behind them like water closing over a stone. The universe was forgetting that they had ever existed. Ver fell to his knees. He could feel himself becoming less real. His memories were slipping away like water through his fingers. His name, his victories, his entire life, all of it fading into nothing. "Please," he whispered to the empty air. "Please, I do not want to be forgotten." There was no answer. There was no one left to answer. On the moon, Yuki Tanaka recorded the exact moment when the last trace of the invasion fleet vanished from existence. Her instruments showed a brief spike in local space-time distortion, and then nothing. The solar system was clean, empty, as if nothing had ever disturbed its peace. She made a note in her log: "Invasion neutralized. 0 human casualties, 0 human engagement. The artifact has returned to dormant state." She paused, then added, "Sometimes I wonder if we should feel guilty for letting this happen, but then I remember that they came here to enslave us, to kill us, to burn our world." She looked out the window at Earth, hanging blue and beautiful in the darkness. Whatever protects us, it does not ask for permission. It does not negotiate. It simply acts, and maybe that is what the universe needs. Maybe that is why it chose us. She turned back to her screens and waited for the next report. In the solar system around her, space was calm. The stars were steady, and somewhere beneath Antarctica, something ancient and powerful went back to sleep. For now, deep beneath the ice of Antarctica, in a cavern that no map had ever shown, something stirred. The artifact had no name that human tongues could speak. It had existed before the earth formed, before the sun ignited, before the Milky Way pulled itself together from clouds of ancient gas. It was older than time itself in ways that human mathematics could not describe. It had drifted through the cosmos for billions of Years passing through galaxies like a ghost through walls it had watched. Civilizations rise and fall it had seen. Empires that spanned 1,000,000 worlds crumble into dust it had been alone for so long that loneliness had lost all meaning. Then it found Earth. It found a small wet planet orbiting an unremarkable star. It found a species that had barely learned to walk upright. They were weak, they were fragile, they killed each other over patches of dirt in imaginary lines, but there was something in them, something the artifact recognized, a spark of something wild and stubborn and utterly unwilling to surrender. They fought against impossible odds. They dreamed of things that did not exist and then built them with their bare hands. They looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there. The artifact had watched countless species. None of them had that spark, none of them had that hunger. It chose humanity. It wrapped itself around their world like armor. It wove itself into the fabric of local spacetime until it and the solar system were one, and it waited for 100,000 years. It protected them. It erased the HFY dominion. When they came with their biological weapons, it unmade the stellar congregation. When they tried to harvest Earth's sun, it deleted the machine collective, the void singers, the crystalline accord, 17 civilizations, each one powerful beyond human imagination, all of them gone now, of them forgotten. The artifact did not communicate these things to its chosen people. It did not explain itself. It simply acted, and when the danger passed, it went back to sleep, dreaming its strange dreams in the ice. Now it was awake again. The Velithari had crossed the border. They had brought their fleet and their weapons and their arrogance, and the artifact was doing what it had always done. In the bunker below the ice, a man sat in a chair and watched the artifact work. His name had been erased from all records. His face had been removed from all photographs. As far as the world knew, he did not exist, but he was the keeper of the artifact, the connection between humanity and the thing that protected them. He called himself the General. He had been doing this job for 40 years. His predecessor had done it for 60 years. Before that, there was always someone watching, always someone recording. The artifact never acknowledged them, but they felt it was important to bear witness. The General watched his screens as the Velithari fleet vanished from existence. He felt no joy, no triumph. He had seen this too many times to feel anything but a kind of tired sadness. Those aliens had come to enslave humanity. They had planned to burn cities and break families and work people to death in mines. They deserved what was happening to them, but still, they were living beings. They had hopes and fears and probably families waiting for them somewhere, and now they would never exist again. You could have warned them, the General said to the artifact. He did not expect an answer. He had never received one in 40 years. You could have sent them some kind of signal, told them to turn back. Artifact did not respond. It never responded, but for the first time in all his years of watching, the General felt something, a presence at the edge of his mind, a thought that was not his own. It came in images, not words. He saw Earth as the artifact saw it, a tiny blue dot in an infinite darkness, fragile and precious and surrounded by hungry predators. He saw humanity as the artifact saw them, bright sparks of consciousness burning against the cold void, beautiful in their brief, fierce existence, and he felt what the artifact felt, something that might have been called love, if such a word could be applied to something so ancient and alien, a fierce protective devotion that burned hotter than stars. Mine. The word filled his mind, not spoken, not heard, simply known. They are mine, they have always been mine, they will always be mine, and I will destroy anything that tries to take them from me. The general sat in silence for a long moment, then he nodded. I understand, he said. Thank you for telling me. The presence faded. The artifact went back to its work, but the general felt different now. He understood something he had never understood before. Humanity was not just protected, they were claimed, owned, cherished. Whatever the artifact was, it had chosen them as its family, its children, its purpose, and it would never let them go. On the moon, Yuki Tanaka received a message on her secure channel. It was from the general. She had never communicated with him directly before. Lieutenant Commander, the message read, the artifact spoke to me today. After 40 years of silence, it finally told me why it protects us. Yuki read the message 3 times. Her hands were shaking slightly. What did it say, sir? It said we are its not guests, not allies, not partners. We belong to it. We have always belonged to it since before we learned to make fire. Is that good? There was a long pause before the reply came. I think so. I think it means we are safe forever. Nothing in the universe can touch us. Nothing can hurt us because something older than galaxies has decided that we matter. Yuki looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, empires were rising and falling. Wars were being fought. Civilizations were dying, but Earth was safe. Earth would always be safe. What do we do now, sir? What we have always done. We live, we grow, we reach for the stars, and when we finally leave the solar system, when we finally spread out into the galaxy, we will carry our protector with us, and the universe will learn what it means to threaten something that belongs to a God. The channel closed. Yuki sat in the silence of her observation station and thought about what she had learned. Humanity was not alone. They had never been alone. Something watched over them. Something loved them. Something would destroy entire civilizations to keep them safe. She did not know if that was beautiful or terrifying. Perhaps it was both. Outside her window, the stars burned steadily. The solar system was quiet and deep. Beneath the ice of Antarctica, the artifact settled back into its ancient dreams. Its work was done for now. On the Velithari home world, confusion spread like a disease. The Admiralty had gathered in their great war chamber, waiting for reports from the invasion fleet. They had expected news of victory, news of another world conquered, another species brought to heel. Instead, they received nothing. The quantum-linked beacons that connected them to the fleet went silent. These were not ordinary communication devices. They operated outside normal space. They could not be jammed or blocked. They could reach across the entire galaxy in an instant. But now they showed nothing, not silence, not static, simply nothing, as if the fleet had never existed. Try again, the Lord Commander ordered. I have tried 100 times, the communications officer said. His voice was trembling. The beacons are working perfectly, but there is nothing to connect to. The fleet is not there. According to these instruments, it was never there. That is impossible. I watched 12,000 ships launch. Snorts. I spoke with high Admiral Voreth myself, I know, Lord. Commander, but look, the officer pulled up the military records, the invasion fleet was listed there, 12,000 ships, 40 million soldiers, all the details were correct, but beside the fleet designation, there was a single notation that had not been there before: status unknown, no records of deployment exist. The Lord Commander stared at the screen. He remembered watching the fleet leave. He remembered the cheering crowds. He remembered the speeches about glory and conquest, but when he tried to remember the details, they slipped away from him. Like water, had the fleet really launched, or had he just imagined it? The memory felt less real with every passing moment. Something is wrong, he whispered. Something is very wrong. Over the next several years, the confusion only grew deeper. Military records began to change on their own. Officers who had served on the invasion fleet were listed as having retired or transferred to other assignments. Ships that had been part of the Armada appeared in other fleet rosters as if they had never left. The Velithari people began to forget. Not all at once. Slowly, gradually, the invasion became a rumor, then a legend, then a half-remembered story that old soldiers told in bars, uncertain if they had dreamed it. Within a decade, the Dominion had no official record of ever attempting to invade Earth. The humans remained in their small solar system, unaware that an empire had tried to conquer them. The universe itself seemed to have decided that the invasion had never happened, but some remembered. Some always remembered. The elder races watched from their ancient worlds and nodded to themselves. They had seen this before. They would see it again. They updated their archives with a new entry. The Velithari Dominion attempted to cross Earth's border. The Dominion still exists, but the invasion has been erased from their history. The border remains intact. One of the elders, a being of pure energy that had existed since the first galaxies formed, spoke to its companions. This makes 18 civilizations that have tried, 18 that have been erased or destroyed or forgotten, and still the younger species do not learn. They never learn, another elder replied. They see a small world with weak inhabitants and they think it is easy. Pray, they do not understand what guards it. Should we warn them? Should we tell them what we know? The first elder made a sound that might have been a laugh. We have tried. The Velithari had our warning. They ignored it. Every species ignores it. They cannot believe that something so powerful could protect something so small. What is it? In all these billions of years, have you ever learned what it is? The elder was silent. For a long moment. I have theories. I believe it is something from before this universe, before the laws of physics as we know them. It does not belong here. It should not exist here. But it does, and it has claimed those humans as its own. Why them? I do not know. Perhaps it sees something in them that we cannot see. Perhaps it is simply lonely and they were the first species to make it feel less alone. Or perhaps there is no reason at all. Perhaps it simply chose them the way a parent chooses to love a child. The elders fell silent. They had no more answers. They only knew that some borders should not be crossed. Some species should not be touched. Some worlds were protected by things that even gods could not fight. On Earth life continued. The humans went to work and raised their children and argued about politics. They built cities and wrote books and fell in love. Most of them had no idea that an Invasion fleet had come for them. Most of them would never know, but some knew. The general in his bunker beneath Antarctica, Lieutenant Commander Yuki Tanaka in her observation station on the moon, a small handful of others scattered across the planet who had been trusted with the truth. They called their doctrine the Threshold Protocol. It was simple. If an alien force crossed into the solar system with hostile intent, humanity would do nothing. They would not fight. They would not flee. They would simply wait and let the artifact do what it had always done. It feels wrong, Yuki said to the general. One day, letting something else fight. Our battles, letting something else kill. For us, I know, the general replied, but what choice do we have? We did not ask for this protection. We did not even know about it until 100 years ago. The artifact chose us. It guards us. We can either accept that gift or reject it. And if we reject it, then the next invasion fleet will burn our cities and enslave our children. Is that what you want? Yuki did not answer. She knew he was right. Humanity was weak compared to the civilizations that hunted them. Without the artifact, they would have been destroyed 100,000 years ago. They owed their entire existence to something they did not understand. We will grow stronger, she said finally. We will reach the stars, and someday maybe we will be able to protect ourselves. Maybe, the general agreed, but until then we stay inside the walls. We accept the protection we have been given. And we remember that we are not alone in the universe. Something watches over us. Something loves us, and something will destroy anyone who tries to take us away. Yuki nodded. She looked out at Earth, hanging blue and perfect against the stars, her home, her species, claimed by something ancient and powerful and utterly devoted to their survival. It was strange. It was frightening, but it was also in its own way beautiful. Somewhere across the galaxy, a young civilization was looking at star maps. They were ambitious, hungry. They had just discovered faster than light travel, and they wanted to test it against a weak target. They had found a small blue planet in an unremarkable system. They began planning their invasion. They did not know about the border. They did not know about the artifact. They did not know that 18 civilizations had already tried what they were planning, but they would learn. They would all learn. The border remained, and those who crossed it did not return, not ever.